John Justice. You can also drop me an email, talkshownerd@gmail.com. That is available in the notes for the podcast as well. But earlier in the week, Dale Jr. put up a video, and it was a video basically showing the renderings for all of the different choices he had for paint schemes for this year's Nationwide car. I thought that was, as a fan of paint schemes, I thought that was really cool. You have to pause it because it runs pretty quick as it flips through all of the different layouts. But man, there was some really cool options for paint schemes, and I've never seen Junior, put out, hey, these are the ones that we had to choose from. I just thought that was really, really cool. I think the one they chose was the best one that I saw, but at the same time, it's hard to judge because that's the paint scheme that we have, so you tend to be somewhat biased over the one that he's driving, so it's easy to say, I like that one the best. But I'll try to find that and throw it up on my Twitter feed. One more quick point about the Nationwide paint scheme, and I just happened to stumble across this. In 2014, when Dale Jr. Debuted the Nationwide paint scheme at the end of that season, he did run that car at the end of the year. I think he only ran it, maybe ran it at Phoenix, but he may have only run that paint scheme at Homestead at the end of the season. There was a slight change from 14 to 15. And this was the paint scheme where the bottom half of the car was white, and then it had the stripes of different tones of blue, different shades of blue, into the predominantly blue car, very similar to this year's paint scheme. The difference between 14 and 15 was how low on the car the blue came down. So you had the white, and then you had a couple different shades of blue into the all blue top. In 2014, he had that up really high, and it came down. Let me grab the car here. It came down, the paint scheme in the front came down in between the lights and the front grille that has the Chevron logo on it. And then in the next season, he moved that blue down a little bit. Now, if you think I'm overanalyzing this, Dale Jr. overanalyzes his paint schemes. If you recall, if you were paying attention at all, in early 2014, is that right? Yeah, 2014, when he had that really cool red, white, and blue, mostly white National Guard paint scheme. There was a stripe that came over the front of the hood that he actually had to change because he didn't like the way that it angled. So, he gets more into this than I do. So I only bring up this because this year's Nationwide paint scheme, the nose looked really, really familiar to me. I go, man, the nose looks familiar. Just the way the blue comes down with the white, again, in between the headlights and the grille with the Chevron logo. Well, I have one t-shirt from the initial launch of the Nationwide paint scheme in 2014. And that one t-shirt is the one item, I do have a diecast, but is the one t-shirt that has just that 2014 paint scheme from the Nationwide car, different than the one they ran in 2015. What's interesting about it is, and boy, I spent a lot of time on this, the nose is almost identical. The way they crafted the paint scheme for this year's Nationwide car, if you looked at it head on, from the 2014 Nationwide car to this one, it's almost identical. I just thought that was neat, and I wonder if even Dale Jr. realized that they had done that. So there you go. Way too much detail into Dale Jr.'s paint scheme. Speaking of which, the Axalta paint scheme for this year might be, man, it's teetering on my favorite paint scheme so far. I like it so much better than last year's Axalta paint scheme. And I liked the red. The red last year on the Axalta paint scheme and the way that it faded down through the orange and the bright yellow, I thought was cool. And the red reminded me a bit of the Budweiser car, so I thought that was interesting. But this year's paint scheme, I cannot wait to see that on the track. I want to see it in the light of day, and I want to see that sucker at night. That paint scheme is so cool. And just really, really pops. And it's kind of out of the norm for Dale Jr. Usually his paint schemes are pretty basic, and I like the fact, and I think it's mostly due to the sponsor being Axalta, but I like the fact that they really decided to do something visually dynamic for that car. I have a t-shirt on order, and I actually just looked, and it should be here by Monday for that particular paint scheme. Usually I buy the bull-size diecast every single year. But just because finances have been a little tighter, I haven't purchased a 124 scale paint scheme car since the 2015 Nationwide car, but I might have to buy that Axalta one. I'm certainly getting the 164 scale, and I'm actually holding the Nationwide 164 scale right now because I like to put the car out when I watch the races too. So, and I may have to get a couple t-shirts of that Axalta paint scheme. So again, the only one that we're waiting on, apart from the special paint schemes that he does throughout the year, is that Mountain Dew car. So hopefully we'll get a look at that fairly soon. I'm actually surprised. I mean, they must be planning on doing something special with it, which is why they haven't announced it. When you go to any of the websites, it still has the covered up. It has a listing if you want to purchase the diecast for the Mountain Dew car, but at this point in time, they still have it. The car covered up in the graphics. All right, before we get to the race preview portion of the podcast this week, let's talk a little bit about these rule changes. And I don't want to go into all of them. Specifically, if you've been watching Speed Weeks, if you watched the truck race last night, if you pay attention, and more than likely, if you've downloaded this podcast, you know the changes that NASCAR has made and that we have stage racing now. We have a clock to get your car fixed. If they go into the garage, then you can't run on the track anymore. Okay, so we saw this play out last night in the Camping World Truck Series, and I like it. I think this is a great addition. Certainly, it changed the racing last night. It was unfortunate that the trucks wrecked on stage one, but we never would have seen that kind of hard racing that early into the race in a battle to get those points that soon into a race. And so I love the fact that now we have an opportunity to have a couple of mini races within the big race. And I also like the opportunity that this, and I'll talk specifically about Junior, but I would imagine this is for any fan. Okay. When I watch the race, I follow Dale Jr. I have a laptop open that has the race view from the website, and then I have an iPad that has the race view app going, so I can watch him on the track there as well, and I can move the camera angles around. I'm of course listening to the in-car. I'm jacked into Dale Jr.'s race and listening to TJ and Junior and Greg Ives throughout the race, and I know how frustrating it gets when. And before it was a part of the strategy, and if the car's not good, then the team has to deal with that. But I like the fact that this is changing. When Dale Jr. is struggling, and we're about to go laps down, and we're just dying and begging for a caution flag to come out because you just know that there's an opportunity here to change the car, to turn the race around. But if it doesn't come and he goes a lap down, I mean, it can just ruin the entire day. It ruins the entire day for the team. If they can't get that lap back, it ruins the day for those of us that are fans. So I really like the fact, and again, I would imagine this goes for any for any fan of any driver. If you're okay with these changes, I like the fact that going into the race now, we know that we are going to have scheduled opportunities to go and work on the car. We're going to have scheduled opportunities to take a breather, to reset, which is going to keep at least I hope, is going to keep more cars on the lead lap. It's going to keep the cars more competitive, and it's going to give us better racing going into those segments and the opportunity to provide strategy, especially at a place like Daytona. And I'll get into this more with the race preview portion here in just a moment with Dale Jr., but especially at a place like Daytona where you have a different set of issues, not like a short track or a 1.5 miler, this being a restrictor plate race. Not necessarily a concern of going a lap down, but certainly a concern of getting stuck in the pack. This provides better opportunities, and I liked the way that it played out last night. And I know a lot of people were complaining about the 5-minute, fix the car clock on pit road. I mean, Twitter last night was exploding with people just getting butt sore over that. Look, and I agree, Jeff Gluck put a fantastic editorial out this morning, and I'm with him, man. Suck it up. I don't want to see, cars that are wrecked that aren't going to be competitive, especially at Daytona, out just lingering on the track. If they can't get the car fixed, too bad. Let's get the cars that are in the best shape, that have the best opportunity to provide the most competitive racing. Let's keep those cars out there. There's no reason for somebody else who is wrecked. And look, this will go for Dale Jr. if he wrecks out too. So I'll be the first one to admit, look, if he wrecks out and there's a problem in the 5-minute pit road clock, it ends up biting them in the butt. Hey, man, that's a part of racing. But I like the fact that we are really zeroing in on the competitive aspect of this, and NASCAR is doing its best to increase the competitiveness while stripping away the ability of people who aren't going to be competitive to get into the mix, which could end up diminishing racing. Now, I want to talk briefly about Alex Bowman and what a fantastic job he's done. Alex Bowman is a driver that I could see myself becoming a huge fan of. And when Dale Jr. retires, I really hope that Alex Bowman gets a good ride, because the guy is a really good driver. He seems like a really good kid. And I've been thinking a lot about who I'm going to end up following when Dale Jr. retires. If you've been paying attention to any of the media over Speed Weeks, you'll know that Dale Jr.'s contract is up at the end of this year. He said he was going to wait a couple of months before he re-signs with Hendrick Motorsports. Said in an interview that if he ends up winning a championship, he may even consider bumping up the timeline to retire. It's clear that Dale Jr. and Amy want to have a family. And it's also clear that this concussion has really changed his perspective on things. And Amy has changed his perspective on things. And racing is still one of the biggest things in his life, but I think Dale Jr. is slowly realizing that there's life beyond him racing the race car. And he could be a commentator and be like Jeff Gordon. It's going to be devastating for us fans, but there are other drivers out there and a crop of other drivers. So I've been really looking for a driver that I can go and get behind. And I've been trying to put myself in a mindset, not thinking about it too much, because Dale Jr. hasn't announced retiring, so I don't have to worry about it, at least for this season. But also realizing that whoever I do become a fan of, it's probably not going to be in the same way that I was a fan of Dale Jr. Dale Jr. is just a very special, singular individual and there isn't really anybody else like that out there. So I'm just going to have to deal with the fact that I'm not going to find another Dale Jr. that I could attach my fandom to. Alex Bowman, however, I hope he gets a full-time ride, and I thought he did fantastic last year. Was really hoping that he was going to win at Phoenix last year. He did a great job in the Clash earlier this week. TJ was driving that car. If you were listening to the in-car, TJ Majors was telling him when to side draft, when to pull away. It was really, really amazing. Alex was obviously the one behind the wheel of that car, but TJ Majors did just a fantastic job of guiding him. And it's also clear, based off of what I heard between Dale Jr. and TJ Majors in the duels, that it's going to be a team effort on Sunday. Those guys were out for blood in those duels. Ryan Blaney, if that guy can calm down, is going to be a threat. And I think if he gets into another car, I know the Wood Brothers car at Daytona is super competitive, but if he can get into another car, another team, that kid is going to be a superstar. And how aggressive he was trying to get past Junior, I was getting really, really worried. I'm not going to say I was thankful that he got bumped by by Jimmy Johnson and taken out, but it was either going to be Ryan Blaney or it was going to be Denny Hamlin at the end of that race, and I would have preferred Ryan Blaney. He also is a Star Wars fan, but I while he's driving a Ford, I'm not going to consider myself to be a fan of his. I'm not a big fan of Fords. So I know that Alex Bowman is working with Hendrick Motorsports and doing a lot of testing for those guys, and I really hope that he picks up a full-time ride, because without naming names, there are plenty of drivers in the Monster in the Monster Energy Cup Series. That's what we're calling it now, right? And by the way, this controversy over the Monster Girls, people need to get over themselves. If you haven't heard about this, people are getting upset about the way the Monster Energy Cup girls are dressed in Victory Lane. Get over it, guys. Get over it. NASCAR needs to bring in a younger demo, and those girls are going to help in doing that. So just get over it already. But there are drivers within the Monster Energy Cup Series that aren't nearly as good as Alex Bowman, that Alex Bowman could do a much better job in driving their cars. So I really do hope that he gets a full-time ride soon. All right, let's get into race preview and my thoughts for Dale Jr. come Sunday. So here's how I'm going to break this down. And I've kind of shifted from year to year. Usually I try to give my expectation, my personal expectation, based off of all the factors that my brain decides to compute to, spit out my prediction for the race. And usually it